Alright. Hello. Hi. Welcome. Welcome. Okay, so I am so excited for today's stream because first of all, it's during the day, so I don't have to be as quiet. And second off, wait, why is the second off? Oh, it's during the day and it's finally quiet. Normally I have to like do it at nighttime and I have to be, really quiet because it's a lot of people, or I have to do it really late. But this time is during the day. So anyway, we're gonna get started. It is day 3. Today we are going to be reading Genesis chapter 29 to 40. Woo. So flip your Bibles. It's the first book of the Bible. Okay. Are we ready? All right. Okay, so it says Jacob arrives in Padan Aram. So first off, I do want to say this though. Just as a reminder, I'm not always going to read out loud. Like sometimes I'm going to read in my head, especially if it has like a lot of words. I mean, a lot of names. Anyway, that's what we're saying. So it says, then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the field with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks gathered there, the shepherds would roll away the stone from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. He said to them, "Do you know Laban, um, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know them," they said. Then Jacob asked him, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said. "And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." "Look," he said, "the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to pasture." "We cannot," they replied, "until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep." While he was still talking to them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Then Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and Laban's sheep, and he went over and rolled away the stone from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and the son of Rebekah, so she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home. And there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." Jacob marries Leah and Rachel. After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was weak. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel was lovely in form. So Leah is the older and beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed and I want to lie with her." So Laban brought together all the people of the place to give a feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and Jacob lay with her. Everybody's so sneaky. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be looking down like that. Maybe I'll try to pick it up a little bit. Okay. Everybody's so sneaky though. So then it says he took his daughter and gave him to, okay. And then Laban gave his servant girl Zilpah to his daughter as her maidservant. So just to make sure, he wanted to marry Rachel, and the father gave him Leah. Okay. When the morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this that you've done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why did you deceive me?" Laban replied, "It is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older. Finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work." And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and Laban gave his daughter to Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maidservant. Jacob lay with Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Because the Lord heard that I'm not loved, he gave me this one too." So she named him Simeon. Again, she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him three sons." So his name was Levi. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "This time I will praise the Lord." So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. So her children are Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Wow. Okay. So there's been so much deceit so far. So much deceit between um what is it, Jacob and Esau. I really need to figure it out. Um who else lied? Oh my goodness. Well, you get what I'm saying. Who else lied? There's been so much lying so far. But there's why is everybody just lying? All of these oh oh sorry, I'm like all over the place. But yeah, there's a lot of deceit so far. So anyway, one thing that I really like one of the themes that I really like about the Bible is that we can be like our lives are influenced by other people, and sometimes what's going on to us isn't even necessarily like God punishing us or something. It could just be because he wants to teach somebody else a lesson. So Leah got four children because her husband didn't love her. And Rachel wasn't able to have children because of her husband didn't love his other wife. And I mean, I know that that might not seem like a big deal to other people or to you guys, but I just really think that it's cool that our lives can be influenced by others, and that's why we have to be careful about who we hang around, and we have to be careful about even what our friends do, and that's why we have to hold our friends and wives and children and whoever accountable, because their life choices can influence us. So I'm going to put um yeah, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to say that Leah was blessed with four children because God saw her misery. While Rachel was barren because of the lack of love her husband gave to Leah. I also think that that kind of represents, like, even if we have like our own favorites, or we have something or someone that we like more or we're more attracted to, we are to love all God's people, even the people that like aren't attractive, or like people that we don't like. We're to love everybody. Okay, chapter 30. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Jacob became angry with her and said, "Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children?" Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my maidservant. Sleep with her so she can bear children for me." That ran through her, so I too can build a family. Kind of like Hagar and is it Sarah? Hagar and Sarah. Wow. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said to her, "God has vindicated me, and he has listened to my plea and given me a son." Because of this, she named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again before and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "I have a great struggle with my sister, and I have won." So she named him Naphtali. Then Leah saw that she had stopped having children, so she took her maidservant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "What good fortune." So she named him Jod or Gad, I don't know. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "How happy am I? The woman will call me happy." So she named him Asher. During wheat harvest, Reuben went out to the field and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take away my son's mandrakes too?" "Very well," Rachel said. "He can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to meet him. "You must sleep with me," she said. "I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he slept with her that night. Weird. God, I want y'all to see that I'm reading the Bible. So I'm not just looking down. Anyway, God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, "God has rewarded me for giving my maidservant to my husband." So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has presented me with a precious gift. This is my husband. This time my husband would treat me with honor because I had borne him six sons." So she named him Zebulun. Some time later, she gave birth to a daughter named Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and opened her womb. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, "God has taken away my disgrace." She named him Joseph and said, "May the Lord add to me another son." I think what I'm taking away from this is the way that Rachel first reacted when her maidservant got pregnant. She said, what did she say? She said, "I have a great struggle with my sister and I have won." While Leah was saying, "What good fortune and how happy am I?" and giving thanks to God. I think that's interesting. Um, After Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and my children, for I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I've done for you." But Laban said, "I have found favor in your eyes. Please stay. I have learned by the divination, that the Lord has blessed me because of you." He added, "Name your wages and I will pay them." Jacob said to him, "Now you know I have worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. Now when I may do something for my own household, what shall I give you?" He said, "Don't give me anything, but if you do this one thing, I will go on tendering your flock and watching over them for you. Let me go through all your flock today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on the wages you have paid me, any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark colored, will be considered stolen." "Agreed," said Laban. "Let it be as you have said." The same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, um, and all the dark colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend to the rest of Laban's flock. Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from the popular almond plane tree and made white strips on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs so they would all be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When all of the flocks were in heat and they came to drink, they made it in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob sent apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face a streak and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks from himself and did not put them in with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban and the strong ones went to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to its own large flocks and made servants and men servants and camels and donkeys. Okay. So for chapter 30, I think we can take away again us trying to make our own things happen, because that's what I took away with Hagar and Abraham, like us making our own things happen. Also understanding the difference in their reaction when they had children. Leah seemed grateful, and Rachel just seemed like she was trying to have a child because Leah had a child. And then fairness too. With Jacob, let's put that. So we'll put I'm gonna ask, how do we react when our friends slash peers get the blessing that we desire? I think that's all I want to put for that one. But I do want to point out, though, that Laban said to Jacob, I have found favor in your eyes. And he also said to him, I have learned that the Lord has blessed me because of you. I really like that about the Bible and about God. God will literally bless you or bless the people around you based off of your connection to them and the Holy Spirit that's in you, or the God that is in you. I think I really like that. That can be good or bad, but I do like that. So it says, Jacob heard that Laban's son were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and gained all his wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob noticed Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. Jacob was real sneaky though, because I think that's sneaky, because he should have just took them, not given him the weaker of the flock. Anyway, then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. He said to them, I see that your father's attitude towards me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. Okay. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks given birth to speckled ones. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me. In breeding season, I once had a dream that I looked up and saw the male goats mating with the flock were streaked and speckled or spotted. The angel of God said to me, Jacob. I answered them, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. Then Rachel and Leah replied, do we still have to share the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all the livestock ahead of them, along with a goods that he accumulated in Padan Aram, or Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Then when Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, crossing the river, and he headed for the hill country of Gilead. Is it Gilead? I think it's Gilead. Laban. Okay, so on the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream one night and said, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead, where Laban overtook him. And Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You deceived me, and you carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of the tambourines and harps? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren or my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night The God of your father said to me, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long to return to your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob answered to Laban, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone has your gods, he shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me, if so take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maidservants, but he found nothing. After he came out to Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent, but found nothing. Rachel then said to her father, do not be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period. So he searched but could not find the household gods. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. What is my crime? He said to Laban. What sin have I committed that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched all through my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flock. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by the day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime, and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you for 14 years for your two daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. Bogus. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would have surely sent me away empty handed. But God had seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. Laban answered Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet, what can I do today about these daughters of mine or about the children they have borne? Come now and let's make a covenant, you and I, and let's serve it as a witness between us. So Jacob took stone and spit and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones, and they took some stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jagar Sahadutha. Jagar Sahadutha. Jagar Sahadutha. And Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, or Laban, I don't know, is it Laban? Maybe it's Laban. The heap is a witness between you and me today. This is why it is called Galeed. It is also called Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughter, or if you take any wives besides my daughter, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. Laban also said to Jacob, here is a heap and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. The heap is a witness and the pillar is a witness. That I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not come past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge be between us. So Jacob took an oath on the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them, and then he left and returned home. So if you're leaving, don't be sneaky. I think both the men are at fault, but don't be sneaky. And even if Laban was like a messed up, person, when he said, "You deceived me, you carried off my daughters like captives in war, and you run off secretly and deceived me. Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing and music and tambourines and hearts?" And I remember somewhere in the Bible, I don't know exactly where, somewhere in the Bible will say, like, when you leave with joy. So whenever you're leaving a relationship or a friendship or a job or whatever you're leaving, make sure that you leave with joy. Don't leave sneakily. Don't try to run off in the night. I mean, unless it's like a really bad situation. But when you leave something, leave it in happiness and joy and understanding. And that's something that I'm going through right now, because one of my friends, I feel like we're not going to be friends anymore. But just try. It's tough. It's tough trying to like leave something with joy when you're really irritated or when you feel like one person has done you wrong. But here in the word, we say that we need to do it. So don't be sneaky / leave rejoicing I'll put with joy. Um, and again, be careful who you have around you. Jacob doesn't even know that the favorite wife is the one that stole the gods. And she lied. Talk about some, I'm on my period, I can't get up. Girl. Says Jacob also went, now we're on chapter 32. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named the place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my master Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys and sheep and goats and menservants and maidservants. Now I am sending this message to my Lord that I might find favor in your eyes." Then the messengers returned to Jacob, and they said, "We went to your brother, and now he's coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." In great fear and distress, Jacob divided people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the other group that is left may escape. And then Jacob prayed, "O God, my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, 'Go back to your country and to your relatives, and I'll make you prosper.' I am unworthy of all this kindness and faithfulness that you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two groups. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I'm afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." So not only is he asking for him to save him, but he's reminding him. Sometimes we got to remind God of the promises that he's made to us. He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, and 200 ewes and 20 rams, 32 female camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself. And he said to his servants, "Go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds." He instructed the one in the lead, "When my brother Esau meets you, ask, 'To whom do you belong, and where are you going, and who owns all these animals in front of you?' Then you are to say, 'They belong to your servant Jacob, and they are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us.'" He also instructed the second, the third, and all those who followed the herds. "You are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him, and be sure to say your servant Jacob is coming behind us, for he thought, I will pacify him with these gifts that I am sending on ahead. Later, when I see him, perhaps he will receive me." So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So when Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so his hip was wrenched, and he wrestled with the man. Then the man said to him, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Then the man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. And the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, and saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of the hip was touched near the tendon. I don't think I have anything for that. But Jacob literally wrestled with God. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to say about that. Actually, I think I do. I don't know. I like to, let's see. I just think that it's interesting that God wrestled with Jacob after he was alone. I think that isolation piece was important. And isolation doesn't always mean being lonely. Sometimes it's just an opportunity for God to speak to you directly. Okay. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants. He put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children next. Rachel and Joseph in the rear. Himself went ahead and bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to Jacob and embraced him, and he threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And Esau looked up and saw the women and children. Who are these with you? He asked. Jacob answered, They are the children of God. They are the children God has graciously given your servant. Then the maidservants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all, Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau said, What do you mean by all the droves I met? To find favor in your eyes, my lord, he said. But Esau said, I've already had plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. No, please, Jacob said, if I found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God now that you have received me favorably. Please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has graciously been given to me in all that I need. And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Then Esau said, Let us be on our way, and I'll accompany you. But Jacob said to him, My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for the ewes and the cows that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my Lord go ahead of the servants while I move along slowly at the pace of the droves before me, and that of the children I have come to my Lord. Esau said, Then let me leave some of my men with you. He said, But why do that? Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord. So that day Esau started his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That's why the place is called Succoth. After Jacob came from Padam Haram, he arrived safely in the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within the sight of the city. 400 pieces of silver he brought from the sons of Hamor, the son of Shechem, a plot of the ground where he pitched his tent, where he set up an altar and called it El Elohi Israel. This has forgive all over it. Now remember that Esau, first off, Jacob tricked him a couple of times with the birthright in the stew, and even with the blessing from the father, the blessing from what was it, Isaac? Yeah, Isaac. Was that their father? Yeah, that was their father. And then even think about it like not your stepmom, your own mom helps him and he gets to go away. I feel like anybody would be hurt, number one, but I feel like especially since people like to hold grudges, like that's just sometimes I feel like natural for us to do. I may have held a grudge because that's really messed up. Not even just on the brother part, but on the mom part. So this just has forgiveness written all over it. Not only did he forgive him, but he came, he kissed him, he was happy to see him. So when you forgive somebody, it's not even just like, oh, I forgive you and like just go about your way. Like he was actually happy to see his brother and was trying to care for him. He didn't even want to accept his gift. So that's what I just put. I just put a simple forgive. Now we're at chapter 34. It says Dinah and the Shechemites. Okay, so I have to go back. So he came from Panama and he arrived safely in that city in Canaan. So Shechem is a city in Canaan. Okay. Sometimes I just have to connect. Now, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, or Dinah, I think I'm going to say Dinah. So now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, who had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler of the area, saw her, he took her and violated her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father, "Give me this girl as my wife." When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with the livestock, so he kept quiet about it until they came home. Then Shechem, father of Hamor, went to talk to Jacob. Now Jacob's sons had come in from the fields, and as soon as they heard what happened, they were filled with grief and fury because Shechem had done such a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not have been done. So let me make sure I get this right. So Shechem is the son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler. So this is the ruler's son who took her and violated her. So the ruler's son. And so Shechem's father, the ruler, came to talk to Jacob. Okay, just making sure I put this together. Hamor said to them, "My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife, intermarry with us, and give us your daughters, and take our daughters for yourself. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it." Now, I see where the problem is, because this is a city in Canaan, and they weren't supposed to intermarry. They weren't supposed to be like in their way. They're supposed to live their own life, kind of how we are supposed to live our own life and not be of this world. That's why it was a problem. Okay. Then Shechem said to Dinah's father, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am going to bring to you as you like. I'll pay whatever you ask. Only give me the girl as my wife." Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully, and they spoke to Shechem and his father. They said to them, "We cannot do such a thing. We cannot give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will give our consent to you with one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take yourselves for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go." Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man who was most honored of all of his father's household lost no time in doing what they asked, because he was delighted by Jacob's daughter. So when Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to their fellow townsmen, "These men are friendly towards us," they said. "Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will consent to live like us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised as they themselves are. Won't their livestock and their property and all their other animals become ours? So let us give our consent to them, and they will settle among us." All the men who went out to the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brother, took their swords and attacked the unexpected city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They carried off all the wealth and all the women and children, taking as plunder everything in the house. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making stench in the Canaanites and Perizzites and the people living in this land. We are few in numbers, and if they join against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" And that's on that. Don't treat her like a prostitute. Why would you take her like that? I don't think I have anything to say for that. I don't think I have anything to say to that. Maybe I'll have something to say after the next chapter. So it says Jacob returns to Bethel. Then God says, "Jacob, go up to Bethel and settle there and build an off." And actually, I do have something to say. So far, there's been so much deceit and killing and lying and murder and what else? Looting, all this type of stuff, stealing. But one thing that I took away from that part is these are people who are the descendants of like the most blessed. Like Abraham had a huge calling. Jacob. So it's just showing me, that God has made promises with us, and God has made promises through us, like through imperfect people, because it's not like these weren't perfect people. Abraham probably should have waited for God instead of listening to his wife, and Adam should have listened and made sure like the fruit was good, and Eve shouldn't have given it to him, and like Sarah shouldn't have lied for her son to, like, her favorite son to get the blessing. So that just goes to show you that God will use imperfect people to do his work, because all of this is just the beginning of the this is just the beginning of the Bible. We have so much to go through, but we're going to get other blessings from imperfect people, because Moses is down the line, everybody's down the line, but God is using imperfect people to make sure his will is done. So I'm just going to put imperfect people used by God, because even though what's his name, Shechem, should not have raped Dinah and slept with her, right? That doesn't make it right for Simeon and Levi to go and kill every male. It's showing that it's imperfect. People are imperfect. Anyway, so it says, Jacob returned to Bethel. Then God said to Jacob, go up to Bethel and settle there, and build an altar there to God who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. Then Jacob said to his household and all those who were with them, get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God who answered me in the day of my distress, and who has been with me wherever I've gone. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had and the rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell upon the towns all around them, so no one pursued them. Jacob and all the people with him, that's really, man, God will really protect. Jacob and all his people with him came to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan. There he built an altar, and he called the place El Bethel, because it was there, and God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Bethel, so it was named Elon Bakath. After Jacob returned to Paddan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. God said to him, your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel. So he named him Israel. Then God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase your numbers. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and the kings will come from your body. The land I've given to Abraham and Isaac, I also given to you. And I will give this land to your descendants after you. Then God went up from him in the place where he talked about him. Jacob set up a stone pillar in that place where God had spoke with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. Jacob called the place where God had talked to him Bethel. Then they moved on from Bethel while they were still in some distance from Ephrath. Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty. As she was having a great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, don't be afraid, for you have another son. As she breathed her last breath, for she was dying, she named him Benoni, but his father named him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on their way to Ephrath, which is called Bethlehem. Over the tomb, Jacob set up a pillar. To this day, that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. Israel moved on and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. Jacob had 12 sons, the son of Leah, Reuben the firstborn of Jacob, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Rachel's maidservant Bilhah was Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Leah's maidservant was Zilpah. The sons of Leah's maidservant Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born in Paddan Aram. Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre near Kiriath, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last breath and died, and was gathered to his people old and full of years. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So Rachel, the favorite wife, passes, and Isaac passes. Okay. Okay. Just making sure that I'm putting this all together. So God has named him, God renamed Jacob to Israel. I wonder did Rachel give up the foreign gods? That's what I want to know. Did Rachel give up the foreign gods? Because this says get rid of the foreign gods that you have with you. Um, I just want to put the name change. So he goes from Jacob. Wait, am I saying this the right person? Yeah, Jacob to Israel. I'm really trying to like make this a story and understand. So if you hear me like going back and forth, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to make sure that I understand what I'm reading instead of just reading it. I tried to understand it last time, but I didn't read as much last time because I did it in 9 months, not 90 days. So I want to make sure that I actually understand and like connect, things together. So anyway, it says Esau's descendants. This is account of Esau, that is Edom or Edom. So it says he took his wives from the women of Canaan, Adah, daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Ohabama, daughter of Anah, and granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and also Basemath, daughter of Ishmael, and sister of Nebaioth. So it says Adah bore Eliphaz to Issue, and Basemath bore Reuel. Okay. And Oholibama bore Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These were the sons of Esau who bore him in Canaan. This is funny because I remember Korah being the one I don't know if it's like the same person. I don't know if like these are the descendants, but I do remember hearing about Korah when it came to Moses. And these were like it was giving Moses a hard time. Okay. So he took his wives and sons and daughters and all the members of his household, as well as his livestock and his other animals, and all the goods that he had acquired in Canaan, and moved to a land in some distance from his brother Jacob. Their possessions were too great for them to remain together. The land where they were staying could not support them both because of their livestock. So Esau, that is Edom, settled in the hill country of Seir. Who is that? That isn't that like Lot and Abraham? I think that was Lot and Abraham. They had to separate too, but they argued. Anyway, this is the account of Esau, the father of the Edomites in the hill country of Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons. Okay, so it's a lot of names. So I'm going to read this part by myself. So this is verse 9. Okay, so I'm gonna put 36, and it is titled Esau's Descendants, but I'm gonna just put Esau's Descendants because um I think it's good to like connect, but literally reading a family tree doesn't help me like connect. So when like names come up later, we'll know where to come. So I'm gonna put a little star because some of the names that I recognized were what was it? What was the name? Cora. I recognize that. But also I could have sworn that didn't God say or somebody say that Esau was gonna kind of be like the trouble child? There's a lot of prophecies going on so far. But yeah, I remember like Esau being the child that like the trouble child. Yeah, so I think Esau's gonna be the trouble child, and he's the one who was marrying the Canaanite women, even though he wasn't supposed to kind of get back at his parents. If I remember correctly. If I remember correctly. Anyway, chapter 37. Joseph's dreams, it's titled. So it says Jacob lived in a land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob. Joseph, a young man of 17. Okay, so let me just make sure. Let me make sure that I understand what's going on. Okay, I'll just keep reading then. Maybe I'll answer my own question. Okay. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the son of Bilhah, and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more. Okay, I answer my own question. I just want to make sure because I don't want to like lose whose father is who. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, and because he had borne him in old age, he made a richly ornamented robe for him. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any one of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said. "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." And he told this to his father as well as his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now, right off the bat, sometimes God is speaking to you, and you don't need to tell everybody your business. I just want to put that out there because he already had a negative reaction from them. And mind you, these are his brothers, so he probably feels like you can trust him to say it again. But you already had a negative reaction out of these people, so obviously they're not happy for you. They're not happy that God is speaking to you. You know, they don't want to hear it. But you don't always need to tell people God's plan and God's dream for you or what God has shown you. Anyway, so it says, now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flock near Shittim, and Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shittim. Come, I'm going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to them, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring a word back to me." Then he sent him off to the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shittim, a man found him wandering in the fields and asked, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks?" "They have moved on from here," the man said. "I heard him say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. When they saw him in the distance But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So he had good intentions. So when Joseph came to his father, they stripped him of the robe and the richly ornamented robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty and there was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh. I think that's myrrh. And when they were on their way back, and they were on their way back to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him at all. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. His brothers agreed. I think it's really funny how people want to be kind in their sin to try to justify it. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes and he went back to his brothers and said, the boy isn't here. Where can I turn now? Then they got Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood. And they took the ornamented robe back to their father and said, we found this, examine it to see whether it is your son's robe. He recognized it and said, it is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has certainly been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes and put the sackcloth and mourned for his son for many days. All of his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, in mourning will I go to the grave to my son. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, to the captain of the guard. I didn't mean for that to be loud. So, number one, I'm going to put all dreams / visions that God has given you won't always be received kindly. Which leads me to everybody doesn't need to know. Everyone shouldn't know. Also, when we are trying to sin, it is so funny how we will try to justify it. We'll try to justify it and even just lying. Like they had to kill him, get the robe, kill the animal, dip the robe in blood, bring it back to the father, and then act like they were surprised. And then they had to deal with their father's mourning. So I just feel like it's even just showing like lying. You got to do too much to lie. Like the actions behind lying are way more than just, just telling the truth. I do, but you know what? Another thing, Reuben had good intentions, right? But Reuben should have spoke up. And I wonder where he was, because how didn't he not see them? But Reuben should have spoke up. And I think that goes to show us, like, even in good intentions, we have to be vocal about where we stand when there's like an injustice going on. Ooh, I like that. I'm going to put speak and be bold where there is injustice. Because who knows, if he would have said something, right? If he would have said something, then maybe he could have convinced the other brothers to, like one or two other brothers, and then those brothers could have said something. So yeah, speak up when you see an injustice going on, because I don't know where he was, but somehow they were still able to tell him and him not know. Cool. Chapter 28. I mean 38. 38. At that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man, Adullam, named Harah. Then Judah met the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. He married her and lay with her, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son who was named Okay, so isn't Judah is Judah one of I'm just gonna have to start Googling stuff at this point. Who is Judah's father in Old Testament? Isn't it Esau? Is it Esau? Or is it Jacob's? It's Jacob with Leah. Got it. With Leah. Okay. Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with the man. Okay. And he married her and lay with her. Okay, so he married a Canaanite. He married a Canaanite woman, which he wasn't supposed to. She conceived and gave him 2 sons. Then he gave him another son, and his name was Shelah, and it was Kezib that she gave birth to him. Okay, so it says Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and named her Tamar. But Judah's firstborn was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. So it says Judah got a wife for So Judah got a wife for Okay, so Judah met a woman which was the daughter of Shua. He married her and laid with her, and she became pregnant. So the person that he laid with didn't have a name so far. She conceived and gave them So that's who is. Is Judah's son. So Judah got a wife for his son and named her Tamar. But was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. Okay. Then Judah said to Onan, and Onan is his other son, lie with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law to produce offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, so whenever he lay with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from producing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so he put him to death also. Why was that wicked? Because it's supposed to fulfill that duty. Okay, there's one of those side note thingies. So it says Y is the thing, like the letter Y. So I'm trying to find. So it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Where is this Y? Okay, I don't know. Maybe it's because you're supposed to fulfill the duty. Who knows? So it says, oh my back. So Onan passed away because he spilled his semen, so he wouldn't fulfill the duty. Then it says, Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, live as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought he may die too, just like his brother. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went to Timnah to the men who were shearing his sheep, and his friend Harah, the Adullamite, went with him. Then Tamar was told, your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear his sheep. She took off her widow's clothes and covered herself up with a veil to disguise herself, and then sat down at the entrance of Enaim, which is the road to Timnah. So she's covered herself up to go where her father-in-law is coming. For she saw that she thought Shula had now grown up, and she had not been given to him as a wife. So when Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face, not realizing that it was his daughter-in-law. He went over to her by the roadside and said, come now, let me sleep with you. And what will give me and she said, and what will you give me to sleep with you? And he said, I'll send you a young goat from my flock. And he said, will you give me something as a pledge until you send it? He said, what pledge should I give you? Your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand, she answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. And after she left, she took off her veil and put on widow's clothes again. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend, the Edulamite, in order to get his pledge back from the woman, but he did not find her. When he asked the man who lived there, he said, where is the shrine prostitute who was beside the road at Iniam? He said, there hasn't been any shrine prostitute here. So when he came back to Judah, so he went back to Judah and said, I didn't find her. Besides the men who lived here said, there hasn't been any shrine prostitute here. So Tamar is sneaky. How about that? Then it says, then Judah said, let her keep what she has, or we will become a laughing stock. After all, I did send her this young goat, but you couldn't find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution, and as a result, she is now pregnant. Judah said, bring her out and have her burned to death. As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law, I am pregnant by the man who owns these. And she added, if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are, then Judah recognized him and said, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't have given her my son Shelah, and he did not sleep with her again. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb, and she was giving birth. One of them put out his hand, so the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it to the wrist, and this one came out first. But then he drew back his hand, and his brother came out, and she said, this is how you have broken out, and named him Perez. And his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out and was given the name Zerah. Wow. So, sneaky. I'm going to put, she's a prostitute that slept with Judah, and I'm going to put father-in-law. Okay, but why did he say she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son? And he did not sleep with her again. Okay, but it says it has a K. So K is First Samuel. Wait, K is 36. So it says First Samuel 24:17. Because I'm confused. First Samuel 24:17. 24:17. And it says, you are more righteous than I, and you'll be treating me about treat you badly. Oh, okay. I understand, because this is talking about David and Saul. So this says you are more righteous than I, for you have treated me well, but I've treated you badly. But I don't understand how she would have treated him well if she tricked him. So maybe he's saying, because it says she's more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her my son I wouldn't give her to my son. So maybe what he's saying is because he didn't give Shelah to her, that's why, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Now, we have 2 chapters left. Okay, so we're on chapter 39. Oh wait, let me put that note. Is she was considered, I'm gonna put by Judah righteous because, I'm gonna put more because she's not righteous. More righteous because he didn't give his son to her. Okay. So chapter 39. So it says, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. This is the son who they took the robe from and faked his death. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered and lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted his care with everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. See, we can be blessed because of other people. Come on now. The blessing of the Lord was on everything that Potiphar had, both in his house and in the field. So he left in Joseph's care everything that he had with Joseph in charge, and he did not concern himself with anything except for the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, "My master does not concern himself with anything in this house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then would I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. So not only did he not sleep with her, he wasn't even around her. That's what we got to be with sin. When people try to get us to sin, don't even be around them. One day he went into the house and to attend. And you know what? I think another thing that I could take from this is God has blessed us with all this stuff. How can we even think of doing something bogus like that when God has blessed us? How can we even think of doing some of the sins that we do when God has blessed us? That's why I see that too. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran outside of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and ran outside of the house, she called her household servants. "Look," she said, "this Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house. She kept his cloak beside her until her master came home, and she told him the story that the Hebrew slave that you brought came to me to make sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of this house." When his master heard the story of his wife, told him, he said, "This is how your slave treated me." Saying, "This is how your slave treated me," he burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But when Joseph was in prison, the Lord was with him and showed him kindness. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden would put Joseph in charge of all of those held in the prison and was made responsible for all that was done there. And when the warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. So number one, just because we are doing something good or because we're called by God or whatever you want to say, doesn't mean we won't be tested and that people won't despise or lie or cheat on us, whatever it is. I'm gonna put doesn't mean people won't hate. Also, it says that Joseph not only wouldn't sleep with her, but he wouldn't even be around her. So we have to run from sin. And he literally ran out the house. So Joseph ran from sin. Also, in any situation, because Joseph now he was a slave, then he moved, then God graced him with the ability, like all his abilities, whatever. And now he's like top chain, like literally it's the king and then it's him. And now he's in prison. So it seems like, God has taken him from the bottom, brought him to the top, now he's back at the bottom. But even in him being in prison, because God is with him, he's in charge. So in any situation, we got to have faith and we got to continue to acknowledge God and to serve God because he was still favored in prison. So I'm going to put acknowledge God's presence in all environments. And allow God to use you in any environment as well. Just because it seems small now doesn't mean it's actually small. Okay, last chapter. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master. Wait, They offended their master. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials and the chief cupbearer and the chief baker and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of Egypt, were both held in prison, had a dream that same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in the master's house. He said, why are your faces so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there was nobody to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream, and he said to them, "In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were three branches. And as soon as it budded, it blossomed, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hands. This means," Joseph said, "that the three branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore your position, and will put Pharaoh's cup in his hands, just as you used to when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness and mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I've done nothing to deserve being put in the dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket of my head. This means the 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and hang you on the tree, and the birds will eat away at your flesh." Now the third now the third day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all of his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position. So he once again put the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker just as Joseph said in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. So I'm just going to put Joseph interprets dreams. So he's using his gift in prison which is like a non-favorable place. But words, let's look at the words because it's always good to look at the words. It says in verse 8, it says, "Then Joseph said to them, 'Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams.'" So he's recognizing that God is with him. Come on. So God has given them, come on. So the way I see it is Joseph is saying, God has given me the authority because God interprets dreams. So let me hear your dreams because God is in me. Yes, that's how I interpreted that. So I'm going to put verse 8, showing Joseph has authority through God. I like that. I like that. I did not like that the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, though. That was messed up. But I like that because not only does Joseph use his skill and his talent that God has blessed him with in an unfavorable place, showing us that no matter what, we should be letting God use us, but also that that he's recognizing who he is. Like he's recognizing he's recognizing that he has authority through God. Like he's God's chosen for sure. I like that. So we just read 29 to 40, which was awesome. We are behind. I'm behind like 3 days, which is crazy. I'm behind 3 days, so I'll probably have to go on again later tonight. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys later tonight. I need to figure out like a hourly, like a time every day that I come on here so I can start like telling people because I haven't told anybody that I do this yet. So Yeah. Anyway, you guys have a good day. You guys have a good day. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you later. Mwah.